Just the same old stuff from the video.
So we learned that Pete Hegseth spoke on the phone with the president after this story broke. What's the latest?
This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputation.
They are not staying quiet. They released a statement over the weekend saying that they were being slandered, denying that they had leaked anything.
One Republican member of Congress says Hegseth is acting, quote, like he's above the law. In an interview with Politico, Congressman Don Bacon said this, quote, if it's true.
Check out this narrative being built around Pete Hegseth and the whole signal debacle, or Signalgate as they're calling it. We're going to see what these left-leaning media individuals think about it, what the CNN host thinks about it, and then we're going to get to a point where there's a whole panel of CNN individuals discussing it, and Scott Jennings is going to calmly explain and give his narrative on the situation. You know we love Scott Jennings, and he does a great job with this. Make sure you stay tuned, like and subscribe. Let's get into it without further ado.
Are you bringing up Signal again? I thought they gave that up 2 weeks ago.
There was a new report this weekend that you used it in a separate chat that included some family members.
It's all just the same old stuff from the video.
That was President Trump earlier this morning, asked about reports that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth shared detailed plans about a military operation against the Houthis in Yemen in a second Signal group chat. CNN's Natasha Bertrand joins us now. She did much of this reporting for CNN. Natasha, so we learned that Pete Hegseth spoke on the phone with the president after this story broke. What's the latest?
Yeah, Casey Star, Caitlin Collins reported that last night after these stories broke in the New York Times and CNN that Hegseth had used Signal a second time to discuss sensitive military plans against the Houthis. Donald Trump and Hegseth did speak by phone. It's not clear exactly how that conversation went at this point, but it did apparently touch upon these stories, as well as, of course, the firings of 3 top officials at the Pentagon just last week and kind of all of the drama that has ensued from that. But Trump, he is standing by Hegseth, at least publicly at this point. He said that he believes Hegseth is doing a great job. Quote, everybody's happy with him. And he said it's fake news, also attributing a lot of the stories to disgruntled former employees, something that Hegseth is saying as well as a reason why all of this is coming out right now. Here's a bit of what he said earlier.
This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me, because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter.
So we should note here that 2 of those former disgruntled employees, as he describes them, were actually hired by Secretary Hegseth, brought in by him to the Pentagon for these senior roles. They are not staying quiet. They released a statement over the weekend saying that they were being slandered, denying that they had leaked anything. And of course, the Pentagon's former top spokesperson, John Olliott, also released a very scathing op-ed in Politico last night saying that there has been a, quote, total meltdown at the Pentagon over the last month because of Secretary Hegseth. Casey.
Yeah, and worth underscoring there, Natasha, that was not anonymous, as Pete Hegseth was just saying there. Natasha Bertrand, thanks so much for your reporting. Really appreciate it. And of course, in the wake of all of this, one Republican member of Congress says Hegseth is acting, quote, like he's above the law. In an interview with Politico, Congressman Don Bacon said this, quote, if it's true that he had another Signal chat with his family about the missions against the Houthis, it's totally unacceptable. I'm not in the White House. I'm not going to tell the White House how to manage this, but I find it unacceptable, and I wouldn't tolerate it if I was in charge. So even some of Hegseth's allies are speaking out against him, or former allies, I suppose. This is what Natasha was referencing. Trump still publicly standing by Hegseth as the White House denies a report that it's looking to replace Hegseth.
Mr. President, are you concerned about the level of chaos and dysfunction that's being described at your Pentagon?
There's no dysfunction. Go ask the Houthis how much dysfunction there. There's none. Pete's doing a great job. Just fake news. They just bring up stories. I guess it sounds like disgruntled employees. You know, he was put there to get rid of a lot of bad people, and that's what he's doing. So you don't always have friends when you do that.
So as we see from the pundits, they are trying to make this out to be bigger than it actually is. Pete Hegseth never talked about classified information with his family on Signal. He never did. But he did have a Signal chat with his family on there. But the media here is trying to paint this as if he was just blurting out information that is classified to his family, which is absolutely it didn't do. As a result of this, a lot of people are going to get fired and have been let go at the White House because of them leaking information in this particular way. As we see the narrative building on the left-wing media wanting Hegseth to be completely responsible for not doing anything wrong at all. Well, just about not anything wrong at all. And we're getting ready to see from a panel of CNN individuals what they think about it, as well as Scott Jennings, who usually destroys the whole narrative. So make sure you like and subscribe. Let's continue watching this video as it's going to get better right now.
Scott Jennings, this one's for you. The Secretary of Defense putting his family on his personal phone on a Signal group chat. Don Bacon, of course, one of the most endangered Republicans in Congress. This, of course, as the spokesman, the former spokesman, who, by the way, had argued for Hegseth to get the job in the first place, says, like, this is a total mess. Should President Trump be standing by Hegseth the way he is, or should he not?
Well, a couple things. One, on the Signal issues, I mean, I think the White House initially, when the story first came out a few weeks ago, acknowledged it was a mistake to use Signal. So that's number one. Number two, based on the people I've spoken to in the White House today, there is no way they are going to throw Hegseth overboard over this. They will double down on this. They will dig in. That's not the way things work in Trump world. I spoke to someone who'd spoken to the president today, and what you saw publicly is what you're also hearing privately, that he is not interested in giving the media or the Democrats a win here over this Signal Gate issue. So my expectation is they're going to stick with Hegseth, at least for now, and double down on the fight over these Signal issues, which they consider to be over with and not that big of a deal.
Okay, so they think that they don't want to give Democrats a win. But Elliot Williams, my question is, like, if, you know, this is what we're reporting, right? That it was a Signal chat, personal phone, members of his family. So again, separate from like the national security officials who all had security clearances, right? And were like allowed to see a lot of the information, presumably. Did he break the law?
He certainly violated the standards for handling information and maybe broke the law. Now the question is, what do you do about it? And I just, you know, and picking up on your point, Scott, when it comes to the questions of his competence to serve, it always goes quickly to, well, they don't want to give Democrats a win, or, well, we came out of Joe Biden and Lloyd Austin, therefore somebody else should be Secretary of Defense. No one is making a compelling argument for Pete Hegseth's competence to be Secretary of Defense. And
the choice is not necessarily Lloyd Austin or Pete Hegseth. It's Lloyd Austin or any Republican.
But that's
right.
But that's how it's framed.
But these people don't just exist like in a pod and you pop the pod and put the next one in. There's a confirmation. Sure. They spent an enormous amount of political capital on getting Hegseth confirmed. To bail on that now, I think would be just, I just don't think it's in their DNA to do that.
But you're kind of confirming my point, though, which is that it's a question of what it would take to get someone else in the job, not is this person who appears to be manifestly unfit to be running a multi-billion-dollar agency with hundreds of thousands of employees.
They don't agree with that.
I know they don't, and I don't think they're taking advice from me on this. But the point is, it always gets to, well, it would be difficult to put somebody else in. Well, the other guys were worse, and not, we actually want this person to be running one of the most cabinet departments in our government.
So every opportunity gets, Secretary Hegseth talks about returning the Department of Defense to the warrior mindset. I've served in the military for 15 years. I can tell you the number one issue with the warrior mindset is leaders don't always follow the rules that lowest level service members are held to. I can promise you that a service member on day 2 with a security clearance would not only be fired for doing what Secretary Hegseth did, but would also be potentially imprisoned according to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. This is not only reckless, this puts the lives of service members at risk, and it shows once again another piece of evidence in a long story now that Pete Hegseth is not qualified for this job. And I don't think we've ever seen this as a nation where the Secretary of Defense is on a weekly basis endangering the lives of our troops.
Kristen, at what point and what do voters tell you about how much this matters to them and how they perceive it?
So I think if this is an inside the Beltway story, right? Somebody who's a principal in a communications war with people who are their former staff, that is a playbook that has been run frequently during the Trump era, both Trump 1.0 and now Trump 2.0, where you have people who leave, they say, you will not believe what I saw on the inside, and it becomes this he said, she said problem. However, if the Department of Defense actually does melt down, as some of these folks have been saying, that's the point at which I can see voters beginning to say, oh, maybe this isn't.
What is the evidence for the meltdown, though? I know this argument's been made. We are pounding the Houthi rebels. Morale is up. Recruitment is up in the military. I mean, some of the things that I think were going wrong in the military are clearly being corrected. So the idea that there's a meltdown in progress, I think that
yes,
there's
that is why I said
if
it would have to be something voters would have to feel that there is a meltdown in progress rather than it just be bickering in the press.
As we see from the panel, who are comprised of left-leaning individuals, even they said they don't believe that this is any type of illegal behavior, that they believe that what he did was just wronged. And as we saw, calmly, intelligently, Scott Jennings talked about how this probably was a mistake to use Signal. I don't actually think so. But for optics perspectives, it may have been. But at the end of the day, this is a nothing burger as far as the Trump administration is concerned. But the media is trying to blow this up to be something big and something huge, when in actuality, it's not. So I hope you liked that video. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next video.